Hey now, Rob.
Thank you. Just a short update on the RD&E areas that PHA is involved with. The major focus at the present time is rewriting the National Plant Biosecurity RD&E and extension strategy. This is a strategy. The original strategy was approved by AgSoc and AgMin about 4 or 5 years ago, and we're now in the process of rewriting it to take us out for the next 5 years. One of the key areas that we're looking at for the next 5 years is how the advisory committee that oversights this strategy can be more inclusive of all stakeholders. I've had a number of conversations about how we engage industry better, how we engage the university sector, how do we engage other funding providers that are relevant in the RD&E space for plant biosecurity, such as ZEBRA or ACR. And so that'll be a major part of taking the strategy forward. There's also been quite a shift in the dynamics of how the plant biosecurity system operates in the last 5 years. There's been the IGAP2, the plant biosecurity CRC is winding up at the end of this financial year, and there's been the formation of the Plant Biosecurity Research Initiative. So there's quite a bit of dynamic shift in the RD&E space. So the other part we're looking at is preparing, and we've got a draft, almost completed a draft agenda for a pastures workshop. So within the scope of the current strategy, and it'll go forward into the next one as a recommendation, is that weeds are included, and we'll be looking at weeds as they impact on plant biosecurity, both endemic weeds and exotics, and in terms of production impacts and also how they impact on animals as food stock. And we're also going to be looking at the impact of toxins and also farm biosecurity measures that producers can put into place to protect their properties from introducing either weeds or grains or feedstock, that hay, for example, that might have toxins or something in it that's deleterious to the animals. The really exciting part for this workshop, from my perspective, is that this is the first workshop where we've got Meat and Livestock Australia and Dairy Australia engaged in this activity, and they're going to be key participants and presenters at the workshop. And we've also got Charles Sturt University as a key active participant, because they're doing a lot of work in this space, and it actually has brought the animal and the plant sectors together with a sort of common focus. So I think it will be quite an exciting workshop when we get to run it. The next part of this is that primarily looking at next year, we'll be implementing the new strategy, hopefully, that it gets endorsed through all the approval processes. And there is a soil-borne disease symposium being held in Adelaide around September. And one of the suggestions that's been made to PHA is that we run a fusarium workshop, as we have done with whiteflies and diagnostics. And that would be the ideal venue to run a fusarium workshop. So when you think about cross-sectoral RD&E, fusarium picks up cotton, grains, horticulture, and it also has impacts on the dairy and sheep meat industries through toxins. So it's got quite a good focus that we should be able to bring together quite a good workshop agenda for that, if we can combine the two together. One of the things that the advisory committee does is that we do undertake smaller audits. Under the AgSoc R&I structure, a lot of the strategies undertake a major audit every time they do a review of their strategies. And for the cross-sectoral strategies, those major audits don't work very well. They're very difficult to assign people that work in multiple disciplines to a strategy. But what we have done is we've undertaken some smaller audits. For example, we've done the fruit fly audit. We almost completed a viticulture audit, and we've done an audit with the diagnostics, working with SPID. And what we're finding with these smaller audits, we're actually finding some good information that gives us an indication of where the gaps are, opportunities, and what the current capability and capacity in that sector is. The other part is, if those of you went to the CRC's symposium last September, will recall that there was a brown marmorated stink bug workshop held in association with both the AgSoc R&I committee and also the Plant Biosecurity Committee and New Zealand B3, and that report is almost finalised and will be published publicly once it's been completed. then the final part is that PHA has met all its obligations to report back to the AGSOC R&I Committee and has presented to the AGSOC R&I Committee. So the other part that's in the space of the RD&E area is the Plant Biosecurity Research Initiative. And Joe Luck, you may all recall, presented to the PHA member meetings in November on the PBRI. And I think the positive things from my perspective, again, is that the PBRI is now well established. It has developed a website, which you can see on the screen. It's got its key focus areas agreed. It has already reviewed a number of project proposals put forward to it, and Greg could probably elaborate if he feels the need, but it has approved 1 or 2 projects already where there are RDCs are working collaboratively on developing a cross-sectoral plant biosecurity initiative. And I think the other part to it, just listening to Joe talk, is the 7 plant-based RDCs are getting together and they're all sharing information. So I went to a workshop recently which Joe ran on this area, and it was fascinating to see the 7 RDCs all communicating together saying, oh, you're working in that area, we're actually doing some work in this area. If we work together and share information, we can actually do it better. And I think if anything's a positive out of this is that alignment where the RDCs are working collaboratively together and working collectively has been a major initiative already. And that's all I'd say on that topic. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rod. Look, we've got a question from Peter. I'll just read it out, and I think I'll probably have a crack at trying to answer it. The current limited industry and PHA budget expenditure on biosecurity R&D, other than perhaps in fruit flies, and we mentioned earlier that fruit flies has got a whole range of focus and activity at the moment. And there is strong competition within industries for the R&D dollar, and I think we need to look at opportunities for how we can actually improve that. So one of the things we're doing is not only through the AGSOC or the government framework that Rod talked about, but making sure we maintain a biosecurity focus in that process through engagement with state governments in particular. But also the Plant Biosecurity Research Initiative that we set up with the 7 RDCs, it also has the Department of Agriculture and Water Resources as a member as well. And what we try and focus on is, we obviously focus on biosecurity, but sort of cross-sectoral biosecurity. And in that process, in the discussions we're having, we are certainly identifying some areas of duplication and fragmentation, which allow us to improve the efficiency of that funding, but also getting the right people around the room that can make those funding decisions to really focus on some of the key issues I think is critically important. As you probably all appreciate, the RDCs are particularly independent organisations. So, you know, we're not in a position of trying to instruct the RDCs to do things differently, but I'm sure by the collaborative arrangements we've got around PBRI at the moment, we'll actually see over time an increase in RDC funding of biosecurity, but it'll be a stepwise thing rather than something that sort of happens immediately. Certainly initiatives that we have like the Rural R&D for Profit program and the program that Sharon referred to is another good example of how we can actually work together to get a really good outcome for biosecurity, not only through industry and government matching through the RDCs, but also through other funding sources, in this case, the federal government, which I think is quite useful. We have another question. Tanya via text. How does the extension strategy fit in with the National Biosecurity Statement? Department are presenting a workshopping tomorrow. Good luck, Rod.
Thanks, Greg. Joe Luck will be attending that meeting in Melbourne tomorrow, and when that meeting's complete, she will be talking to us about how we then feed that into the National Plant Biosecurity RD&E strategy. We've already got that. The next meeting of the strategy will be middle of next month, and that's one of the agenda items on the agenda as to how to mesh it into the rewritten strategy.